Hi, it's MJ from Lioness Publications. I want to come back and just take a look at Charlie Kirk. We looked at him last month, and when I did some analysis on him, I noted in the video that he was going to have, there was some things coming up in September that were going to be a little difficult, but I had said I think he's going to be able to get through that. Uh, Unfortunately, it doesn't look like he was able to. And I just want to make a note. Usually, with any type of catastrophic event like this, you usually need to have a time of birth, which we didn't have with Charlie Kirk. So it's always very hard to isolate it down. But I think it is sort of a good thing to sort of go back and just reevaluate some of his charts and see what I was seeing back then, and taking a look at it with an eye now that we know what happened. So first thing I want to touch on is his transit chart. And if we look at that, we can see what I originally talked about in August. And that was in September, we were going to have Jupiter opposing both his Neptune and his Uranus. What is Uranus? It's change. Opposition is rebellion, since it's opposition to Jupiter. And we have also the Neptune, which is the idealism, possibly lies, things like that. And we have Jupiter opposing this, which is making this even more gaseous, more exaggerated. Now, in addition to that, what we have is that Jupiter is also squaring both his Sun and Jupiter. So the fact that this is now what's called a T-square is adding a lot of stress to this. So this is indicating that in his natal chart, we had the square from Sun to Jupiter to Neptune and Uranus, but now we have Jupiter chiming in, and it's opposing both Neptune and Uranus and squaring the Sun and Jupiter. Also, if you look, we have Mars making a conjunction to the Sun and the Jupiter. Now, let's also take one other note here, and that is that Saturn is actually making a trine to both the Sun and Jupiter here. So that is some type of focus. Trine is usually focus, a dedication. Now, at this point, we really don't know how that's going to tie in, because we don't know if this has something to do with the setup there, because the focus seems to be, it was a university, so it's not something that would be associated typically with Saturn. But Saturn somehow is fitting in here, and it's hard to say exactly what that fit in is. Now, if we look at the progression, one of the things we note here is that we have Mars conjunct the North Node. Mars, again, progression, and it's not a close conjunction, but again, we don't know his time of birth, so it could actually be closer than what's shown here. And the North Node is where you take in. So again, connotation, aggression, where he takes in. Lastly, we have the solar arc. And here, what we have is, we have Neptune and Uranus actually trining Sun and Jupiter. Now, this is emphasizing, again, the opposition from Jupiter to Uranus and Neptune. It's also that these planets are involved. So this is ideology. It is changeability, rebellion, revolt. It also emphasizes Sun and Jupiter in this whole combination. Now, his interpretations actually after this day were very easy, a lot of trines and things like that. And that can sometimes happen when there's very little stress. And sometimes it's a sign of a martyr. And we don't know who did this, and I'm not going to make any suggestions as to who it might be. But remember that he was one of the people that stood up and said the Epstein files need to be released. He also started to come back from that when the White House pressured him. He also came, started making comments about women submitting to men. So there are a lot of fractions that could have taken, could maybe have taken what he said too seriously. But I did want to come back and just touch on that. And it's a sorry sight that this is where our country is at right now. Thank you for listening and have a good day. Bye now.